Iraq had invaded Kuwait. And all of these coalition forces had come to the rescue of Kuwait in their battle against Saddam Hussein. And they were launching these, you probably watched it on TV. It was one of the wars that you could watch it live, satellite live. We could see everything happening, all of these rockets flying over from the Allied forces right into Kuwait and into Iraq. And these fighter planes would come in and drop these laser-guided bombs. Well, when this was happening, this friend of mine came up to me, and he knew I had studied prophecy, and I had talked about it to him for a while. He had been in a cult for a long time. And he asked me, "So Frank, is this Armageddon?" And I said, "No, it's not." And he said, "How can you say that for sure?" And I said, "Well, there's certain things that have to take place before Armageddon takes place. See, there's a chronological order of things that will have to take place before Armageddon happens. One, I told him, there has to be a peace covenant in the Middle East first. Then you're going to have to decide whether you're going to take the 666 mark or not." And he said, "Well, just let me know when Armageddon is close." I said, "Well, I might not be here for you to answer those questions." So, all he wants to do is to get out of here before Armageddon starts. And, I talked to some of my students about, I witnessed to some of my students, and they say, well, what if I can run into and hide into the caves? I said, you're in prophecy, because they said the people will be hiding in caves during the time of the tribulation. And so there's no running, there's no hiding about the only way you can hide or escape this if you have received Christ as your Savior and Lord, and when the Lord returns, He will take His church out to escape all these things and to stand before the Son of Man. And that should be our every heart's desire, is to not be here when this whole upheavals take place. Now, what's about to happen? Now, today's news, it was very interesting about Obama having these peace overtures in Egypt about bringing peace to the Middle East. And he's determined to bring peace to the Middle East within his first term. And I was watching the news all afternoon, and they interviewed all of these Arabs and Muslims, and they said, "What do you think about Obama's speech?" And they said, well, they all liked him. They all liked what he had to say, and it's kind of like he's bringing everyone together. I'm not saying he's the Antichrist, but that's what the Antichrist will do. He will bring all the religions of the world together. He will solve this economic problem that we're having. He will bring peace to the Middle East, and the world's economies will be humming after he takes over. And then he will issue what we call the 666 mark of the beast. Now, about a year ago, there was this guy named Amir Tsarfati, and I was sharing with J.D. in a conversation. I got some tapes from, I believe it was Costa Mesa and in Chino Hills prophecy conferences, where this guy, he's a former Israeli officer, and he was sharing about how Israel had found out about the Syrian nuclear facility that was in the Syrian desert, and they had launched this attack by Israeli warplanes that took out the Syrian nuclear facility. Now, what Sarfati said is that if Syria ever makes any kind of threat against Israel again, that Israel will wipe out Syria, will wipe out Damascus. Now, this is a direct threat to Syria. Don't mess with us. And you know that Israel has the capabilities of taking out Syria. No problem. Now, they've had it up to here, and they're not going to depend on the United Nations. And on Sunday, I shared with you that on May 31st, which was this past Sunday, that Israel had launched a massive civil defense drill, the biggest wartime drill in the history of Israel. Now, when you do a fire drill, or you do any kind of drill, it's not to prepare somebody for 2 years down the road. You understand what I'm saying? The drill has to be for something that's imminent, that's something that's close, that could happen at any time. And when Israel had launched this war drill over the Mediterranean, where they flew 100 fighter planes, I think it was F-15s and F-16s, over the Mediterranean, the same distance as from Israel to Iran, to Iran's nuclear facilities. So this is a preparation for their next raid on these Iranian nuclear facilities, because they know that the world is not going to support Israel in this, and they cannot be waiting for the United States. And recently, what Obama has said, he says he's coming down heavy on Israel to accept a two-state solution to this Palestinian crisis, that Israel must stop building settlements on the West Bank. So they're coming down with these heavy demands on Israel. But Israel is saying, you got to do something about these Iranian nuclear facilities. Because, they dealt with one madman before, Adolf Hitler. Okay? That cost them 6 million Jews. Now, they're not going to take a threat from an apocalyptic guy named Ahmadinejad. Now, they have to take his warning seriously. Now, in Iraq, in 1981, I believe, when Saddam Hussein made a threat that they was going to nuke Israel and wipe them off the face of the map, what did Israel do? They flew fighter planes and took out the Iraqi nuclear facilities in Iraq. They don't fool around. And the same thing that happened 2 years ago in the Syrian desert. They launched this military strike. It's called preemptive strike, and this is what happened in 1967 war too. They have to defend themselves for their own survival. So, how soon will this happen? I was listening to Fox News the other day, and they were saying that most of the experts, all of the pundits in this whole Middle East crisis situation say that Israel will strike. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, they will strike. It's just a matter of when. Now, Ezekiel 38 says, Israel will be dwelling in peace and safety without walls or gates or bars. Now, Obama's proposal for a two-state solution, having Hezbollah and Hamas living side by side with Israel, will not do. Can you imagine suicide bombers living side by side with you, or having these Katyusha rockets next to your city? Would you take away your bars and gates? No, of course not. You'd leave them up. So something major has to happen. On Fox News this past Tuesday, they took a poll, and 50% of all the Israeli citizens want the government to strike Iran now. They don't want the Israeli government to wait any longer, because the threat is so imminent, and they cannot wait. Now, when Israel conducted this drill this past Sunday, what they did is they had the citizens as well as tourists wear gas masks, because they suspect there's going to be chemical, biological warfare also. And they said, expect in this drill that thousands of rockets will be coming in from all directions. Remember just a couple of years ago when Hezbollah and Hamas was shooting all of these rockets from Lebanon and from the Gaza Strip. So, the Israeli citizens, they've counted the cost. They understand the price to be paid. They know that rockets are going to be flying into their territory. But what's the alternative? To be nuked? What's the alternative? They have to act. It's the same thing that happened in 1967. The same situation is happening today. And on Sunday, I showed you the parallels of the life of Joshua and of modern-day Israel. And there's so many parallels and similarities. You cannot ignore that. Also in the life